Back in 1977, when indigenous peoples, including many of the founders of the International Indian Treaty Council, my organization, entered in for the first time to the United Nations and had the first conference on the rights of indigenous peoples, mainly focused on indigenous peoples of the Americas, North, Central, South America. Two of the things that they called for and demanded that needed to happen was, one, that there would be some kind of body or process, which there didn't exist at the time, where indigenous peoples could gather and discuss their issues, a body dedicated to indigenous peoples. And the other thing that they called for and demanded was that there be an international standard put in place that recognized the collective rights of indigenous peoples. Lo and behold, we're still working on those two original calls, but we've made incredible progress in realizing them. First, of course, was the establishment in 1982 of that first body that specifically was set up to address the rights of indigenous peoples, which was the Working Group on Indigenous Populations. We hadn't quite achieved being called peoples yet. That was a long process through the negotiations on the UN Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So that working group achieved a lot of very important work. It called for and implemented really key studies that are still very relevant today on indigenous peoples' permanent sovereignty over natural resources, on treaties, agreements, and other constructive arrangements, on free, prior, informed consent. And all of those studies fed into the discussion and the work on the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which was another achievement of the UN Working Group, is the drafting of the very first text of the UN Declaration on Rights of Indigenous Peoples, based on the collective rights of indigenous peoples. Because up till then, all of the human rights standards at the UN focused on individual rights, which we also have as individual human beings, but indigenous peoples' rights to land, to language, to culture, to self-determination are all exercised collectively. And our identity is collective identity as peoples, as nations, many would say. So these are all achievements that happened very early on in the process. And I just want to stress that anything that we've gained at the United Nations has been through the struggle and determination and commitment of indigenous peoples ourselves. The UN system, in some ways, welcomed our participation and continues to welcome it at higher and higher levels. But any real gains that we've made has been because of our own efforts in this process. Something that came about also at the working group on indigenous populations was something that we're still seeing today be strengthened and developed, is a global movement of indigenous peoples. We began mainly with indigenous peoples from North America, and then more and more from Central South America. But lo and behold, very quickly, indigenous peoples from all the regions began to participate. We met Samis, we met San people from Africa, and we met indigenous peoples from Asia, from all of the continents, from Russia. And now we have 7 recognized regions of indigenous peoples that are participating fully in so many different bodies at the United Nations. In every area, in the UN Food and Agricultural Organization, in the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, the human rights arena, of course, which is where we started, business and human rights. There's just so many areas that indigenous people's input is considered not just important, but essential. Indigenous peoples, through the creation of the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, the UN Expert Mechanism on Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the establishment of a special rapporteur on the rights of indigenous peoples, and in many other bodies, even UN treaty bodies like the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. Indigenous peoples are now recognized as experts with our own contributions and knowledge to contribute to these discussions. And it's really remarkable when you look back on that first body that we established in 1982, the Working Group on Indigenous Populations. The focus of discussion was on Indigenous peoples. We were peoples, whether they want to call us that or not back then, but none of the experts on that body were Indigenous. It really wasn't even considered at the time. And now the situation is completely changed. We even had our board president, Francisco Cali, become president of a UN treaty body. Not to mention that Indigenous peoples are assumed to be the principal experts on these bodies focusing on Indigenous peoples, but also on other bodies that focus on other issues, on business and human rights, the UN Committee on Food Security, in many different places. So those are some of the main contributions and achievements that we made. But of course, our stellar history-making contribution was the adoption, after 30 years of work, beginning at the Working Group on Indigenous Populations and continuing through to the General Assembly in 2007, the adoption of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the first UN standard that was ever established based on collective rights, in which the recipients and beneficiaries of the rights, Indigenous peoples, were active and key and equal, in many ways, participants in the dialogue to bring about the UN Declaration. It is the minimum standard. As we say, it is not the ceiling, but it's the floor, and it's a floor we didn't have before, and that we're utilizing as we move forward in this movement. It belongs to everybody. It's very exciting to read it, and we should utilize that from our work on the tribal and local level, state, national, municipal, all the way up to all the work that we're doing at the United Nations. And I'll just add one more achievement that just happened in the last year is a body that affects us directly on a life and death basis. The UN Framework Convention on Climate Change was one of the most difficult bodies to even participate in. We couldn't even get in the room when the states were negotiating, say, the Perez Agreement in 2015. But they became the most progressive body recognizing the participation of Indigenous peoples. Just 2 years ago, they adopted the Facilitated Working Group for the Local Communities and Indigenous Peoples platform. And that is the first time we've actually had direct representation where the Indigenous peoples from the 7 regions themselves select their representatives. And I was very honored to be selected to be in that body that focuses on traditional knowledge and practices and our input as Indigenous peoples for adaptation to climate change. They're finally listening to our voices, but not just that, they're formalizing our participation so that we are actually members of a UN body and members that are selected directly by Indigenous peoples for the first time. So you can see the progress is continuing. These are just a few examples, and I really encourage everyone that's listening to get involved in the struggle for the rights of Indigenous peoples, whether it's in your own community or tribe, in one of the many arenas in the United Nations where we're working, or any other way that you can contribute. There's plenty of room and plenty of work to do, and I welcome all of you.